Slow down. Take a breath. Because there is something you never saw, something that never reached you, something that was never allowed to unfold. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now about the moments that were intercepted before they touched your life. There were paths you were about to walk that would have harmed you. There were choices you almost made that would have changed everything. There were connections you nearly trusted that would have cost you deeply. And yet, you were redirected. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. A delay, a hesitation, a change of plan, a sudden feeling that said, "Not this." At the time, you thought it was inconvenience. You thought it was confusion. You thought it was bad timing. But now, you are beginning to understand. Some doors that did not open were not rejection, they were intervention. Some conversations that ended were not loss, they were protection. Some opportunities that disappeared were not failure, they were mercy. You were not unlucky, you were guarded. There were moments when something felt off and you could not explain why. A subtle discomfort, a quiet resistance, a lack of peace. You overrode it sometimes, but other times you listened. And those moments of listening saved you from paths you would have struggled to return from. You were not always aware of the danger. You were not always conscious of the consequences. But protection does not require your understanding. It only requires your survival. And you survived. Not because everything went smoothly, but because what would have destroyed you was never allowed to reach you. There were versions of your future that were quietly erased because they did not belong to you. There were timelines that were redirected because they were not aligned with your growth. And that is why some things fell apart before they fully formed. You thought you were losing control, but you were being guided away. You thought life was unstable, but you were being repositioned. You thought you were being denied, but you were being preserved. And now, you are standing in a place you would never have reached if everything had gone according to your original plans. Look back. There are things you once wanted that you now realize would have limited you. There are relationships you once grieved that you now recognize would have drained you. There are paths you once chased that you now see would have diminished you. That realization is not regret. That realization is wisdom. You did not lose what was meant for you. You were protected from what was not. And the protection did not end in the past. It is still active. Even now, things are being filtered, situations are being redirected, timelines are being adjusted. Not because you are in danger, but because your path still matters. You are still being guided toward alignment, toward clarity, toward a life that supports your growth instead of exhausting your spirit. And what lies ahead will not require you to sacrifice your peace to keep it. What lies ahead will not demand you abandon yourself to maintain it. What lies ahead will feel calm, steady, natural. Because this time, you are not being pushed forward by survival. You are being led forward by discernment. Rest here. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are because countless unseen redirections kept you safe enough to arrive here intact. And that is not coincidence. That is protection that never stopped.
You were diverted because your future matters. Be still again, because there is more you need to understand about the moments that did not unfold the way you expected. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now to the one who once felt confused by redirection. You thought you were losing momentum. You thought you were falling behind. You thought the path was breaking apart, but it was never breaking. It was bending away from harm. There are outcomes you will never see, consequences you will never experience, pain you will never endure, because the direction changed before you arrived. You were spared from versions of life that would have slowly drained you, not in dramatic ways, but in quiet ones, the kind that slowly erase joy, the kind that dull purpose, the kind that makes survival feel like living. So the interruption came. A door closed, a conversation ended, a plan dissolved, a delay appeared. And you resisted it at first. You tried to reopen doors. You tried to understand what went wrong. You tried to return to what felt familiar. Because familiarity often feels safer than uncertainty. But familiarity is not always alignment. And protection does not always feel like kindness in the moment. Sometimes protection feels like loss. Sometimes guidance feels like confusion. Sometimes redirection feels like rejection. But time reveals what the moment could not. Now you can see more clearly. You can see that certain paths would have cost you peace. Certain people would have kept you small. Certain environments would have slowly disconnected you from yourself. You did not lose those things. You were removed from them. And removal is one of the highest forms of protection. You were not redirected because you were weak. You were redirected because your future required preservation. Some people walk into pain because they are meant to learn from it. Others are pulled away from pain because they have already learned enough. You belong to the second. You already paid the cost. You already grew through the lesson. You already carried the weight long enough. So the path adjusted, not to confuse you, but to preserve what was forming inside you. And because of this redirection, you now stand with greater awareness, greater discernment, greater clarity than you would have otherwise developed. The detour did not delay your growth, it accelerated it. It taught you to listen. It taught you to pause. It taught you to feel what is aligned instead of forcing what is familiar. You are no longer someone who blindly walks toward desire. You are now someone who senses alignment before stepping forward. That is wisdom earned through experience. And now, something important is happening. You are beginning to trust the redirections instead of resisting them. You are beginning to accept that what feels calm is more valuable than what feels intense. You are beginning to understand that ease is not laziness, that peace is not stagnation, that clarity is not coincidence. This understanding changes how you move forward, because now, when something does not feel right, you will not push through it just to prove something. You will pause, you will listen, you will choose differently. That is the result of having been protected before. You learned that your intuition is not something to override, it is something to honor. You will no longer walk into the same cycles. Listen carefully now, because what protected you before is also transforming how you move forward. You are not just being redirected anymore, you are being reshaped. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak to the awareness that has awakened inside you. There was a time you walked into situations hoping for the best while ignoring the subtle warnings. You stayed longer than you should have. You trusted deeper than you felt safe. You explained yourself to those who never truly listened. Not because you were foolish, but because you believed in potential, because you valued connection, because you gave others the benefit of the doubt. That was your heart. But now, something has changed. You are no longer blind to patterns. You are no longer surprised by familiar discomfort. You are no longer confused when energy feels misaligned.
you recognize it early, not with fear, but with discernment. And discernment is the result of protection repeated enough to become wisdom. You no longer feel drawn to intensity for excitement. You no longer mistake chaos for passion. You no longer confuse emotional unpredictability with depth. You now seek consistency, clarity, emotional safety. This is not a loss of emotion. This is emotional intelligence forming. This is why your future will not resemble your past, not because the world changed, but because you did. You will no longer tolerate what once drained you. You will no longer chase what once confused you. You will no longer remain where your spirit feels unsettled, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. And self-respect is one of the strongest forms of protection. The cycles that once repeated only existed because you had not yet seen them clearly. But now you see. You see how certain patterns begin. You see how certain people operate. You see how certain environments affect you. And because you see, you will choose differently. You will walk away sooner. You will pause before committing. You will trust the quiet discomfort instead of overriding it. That is not fear. That is wisdom earned. This is why your future will feel calmer, more stable, less emotionally exhausting. Because you are no longer walking through life with uncertainty. You are walking with awareness. And awareness prevents repetition. You are not meant to relearn the same lesson. You are meant to move forward from it. And now you are. Your life begins to respond to the version of you that sees clearly. Remain still for a moment, because something subtle is already taking place around you. You may not recognize it fully yet, but the world is adjusting to who you have become. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now about the external shift that follows internal clarity. When you were unaware, life felt unpredictable. People felt overwhelming. Situations felt confusing. But now that you see clearly, everything begins to organize differently. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but naturally. You will begin to notice that certain people drift away without confrontation, not because you pushed them out, but because your energy no longer matches theirs. You will notice that conversations change, dynamics shift, interactions feel lighter or more distant. This is not loss, this is recalibration. When a person grows internally, their environment must adjust externally. You are no longer offering the same access. You are no longer engaging the same way. You are no longer tolerating the same emotional weight. And without force, life begins to reorganize around you. You may also notice that new types of people begin to appear in your life. Not loud, not overwhelming, but calm, steady, respectful. People who do not drain you. People who do not confuse you. People who do not require you to shrink to maintain connection. These are not coincidences. They are reflections of the boundaries you now carry quietly. Your awareness is shaping your environment. Your discernment is filtering your experiences. Your clarity is guiding what stays and what leaves. You are no longer trying to hold things together. You are allowing what is not aligned to fall away on its own. And because of this, life begins to feel different. Not intense, not dramatic, but calmer, more intentional, more stable. You may even question it. You may wonder, why does everything feel quieter? Why do I feel less reactive? Why am I no longer drawn to chaos? The answer is simple. You are no longer walking blindly. You are walking with discernment. And discernment does not fight the world. It filters it. You are now experiencing what life feels like when you stop forcing alignment and start allowing it. This is not an ending. This is not stagnation. This is the foundation of a new pattern of living. A pattern where you do not lose yourself. A pattern where you do not overextend. A pattern where you do not repeat pain. Because you are no longer the person who walks into harm unknowingly. You are the person who recognizes what does not belong before it settles into your life. And that awareness is the very protection that has been forming all along.